Hey guys, welcome back to the Drumheads podcast. My name is Daniel, and this is episode 51. And this is a episode that Adam and I recorded last week, and we talked about drum solos. We talked about our preferences, some of our favorite solos we like to watch on YouTube or we listen to, and we had some discussions about famous drum solos, some drum solos that are a little overrated. I would tell you, but I want you to listen to an episode. Find out. There's one that we kind of both agreed was it's a little overrated, and a little drums. So oh well, to each his own. And we had just a discussion about technique and style and the things we like. So I'm going to put up some of these drum solos up on the Facebook page so you can go check them out as well. Yeah, it was a fun episode. There is a couple of interruptions from my kids. They just, they want to talk to you. They're going to talk to you. And if you be like, shh, 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 they don't care. They're going to talk to you anyways. But I don't like editing this podcast. For one reason, it takes so much time to edit a podcast. And if you try to edit out those points, it's gonna be more work for me. And I don't have a lot of time sometimes. And it's also, I just want to keep it real. We had some very, very positive feedback from our snare drum, custom snare drum episode that Adam and I recorded, and people liked the fact that one of my kids started talking to me, and Adam's dog was just barking at something random. So I just like to keep the realism to the podcast. And to everybody on Instagram, holy crap, you guys are awesome! 40,000 followers. It's so hard to believe sometimes. I can't wrap my head around it. It's like 40,000 people. So that's just so awesome. But be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. That also helps us as well. It just gets our name out there so we can, become just a better podcast. I'm wanting to, expand. Bringing Adam on was one of the best decisions I have made with the podcast. So, we just want to make this bigger and better for you guys. And, it'd be nice if Adam and I didn't have to work. I'm just saying, So, but here it is, episode 51, drum solos. And the drum solo you heard at the beginning of the podcast was actually me playing back in 2006. And I just, wanted to let you hear what I sounded like playing drums. I don't think I've actually done that on the podcast. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you guys on the other side.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Drumheads podcast. My name is Daniel, and I am joined by Adam. How are you, Adam?
I'm great. How are you?
Oh, I'm just trucking along like usual, just making it through the day.
Yeah.
It's been a whirlwind. I had it's been a weird week. I've had one of the guys I work with just unexpectedly get fired. I'm like, oh, great. Now I got more work to do. So, yeah. But you're out of school, but you're back in school.
Right.
Doing some more teaching. So, yep.
Yeah, I'm doing a summer camp. And it's in the woods. It's a lot of hiking and nature stuff.
Oh, so that's pretty.
It's super cool, but it's still going to work every day.
Yeah. At least you're outside, so there's an up to it. So I have to admit, I'm over being outside because I'm in a warehouse all day and it gets hot as hell in there. But I look forward to being inside, and everybody's like, "Oh, it's summer! Aren't you so glad to be outside?" I'm like, "No, I'm in a warehouse. It's 96 degrees all day with 80% humidity. I'm gonna be inside when I get home." So summer is not my. We talked about it last week. Summer is not. It's overrated. Let's just say that it's overrated.
Yeah, I prefer the New England summer than when I used to live in Florida. It was unbearable.
Oh,
so.
Yeah. My sister lived in Florida for a couple of years, and we went and visited her one summer. I'm like, I don't know how you do it. I would leave. There'd be no way. There's not maybe $1 million, maybe $1 million, but that would be the starting point for me to live in Florida during the summer, for sure. But last week we had a lot of great positive input and feedback about that episode about the custom snare drums. I don't know if you seen any of the comments, but a lot of those drum companies were very supportive and thankful for the episode we did. So I think that's one of the most downloaded episodes we've done thus far.
Wow, fantastic!
Which is pretty rad. So there was a couple of percussion companies that like reached out to me. One was who was it? Salt Drums. We were talking about that Equalizer vintage snare drum, and it kind of inspired the guy to start making his own. So I thought that was pretty rad. And you were talking about Predator percussion, how that guy is doing some just killer stuff.
Right, Predator. It's Mike Martin, and he's part of the custom drum group that I'm a part of. That we sort of talk and exchange ideas and stuff. And he's always posting his stuff, and he's just got some really awesome stuff. And he does stave shells. Mm-hmm. He just started like this past week to really show us more pictures of like a full kit. He's mostly been focusing on snare drums, but recently he's starting to do some floor toms and stuff like that.
Nice.
But he does really awesome stuff, and he offers so much as far as like bearing edges go. He does different inside bearing edges and outside bearing edges. He does like a baseball bat edge. He just does just some really awesome stuff to really customize it and make it however you would want it. And then he also, what I think got me to, because I follow him on Instagram and I follow his Facebook group as well. And I think what got me there in the first place is his finishes. He does these like really awesome, like hand rubbed finishes and just like high gloss stuff. And it just looks great. He does stuff that like I look at and I'm like, man, I wish I could make a drum look like that. That would be fantastic.
Yeah. He does have some of that high quality, high gloss finishes that are, you look at it, you're like, it's a piece of art. It's like I would be scared to play it. I would just like hang it on put it like on a shelf and just look at it. Like, oh, right. It just looks so nice.
I think his slogan too is handcrafted, not manufactured. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that kind of speaks for itself, but it's just great stuff. And there's so many people doing really awesome stuff, but Mike's one of those guys that he's always posting pictures of stuff, and it's always sort of impressive. He does a lot of, so he'll do like different woods within the stave. Mm-hmm. So I've seen like, almost looks like racing stripes sometimes, but you get those like vertical variations between the woods, and he does a lot of play between like light and dark. And there's a couple of pictures of him on Instagram, and he's got like this stack of like, I don't know, 5 or 6 like snare drum shells all ready to be finished and turned into drums, and they all look very impressive. And he's just a good guy. He's got a lot of great stuff going on.
Yeah, we'll have to maybe work out where we can do like a 3-way Skype call and have him on the show.
Oh, that'd be great. I'm sure he'd like it.
Oh yeah. And there was another guy, Spiro Music or Drums, I think. But anyways, the guy, I was looking at he was commenting on Twitter, and he was laughing about like your dog in the background and like my kids like coming in and talking, because I was talking to Melanie, I'm like, my wife, and I'm like, these things happen. I said, you think I should take them out of the podcast or leave them in? And she's like, just leave them in because it makes it more authentic. And I had several people were like, I like how you just kept it in and just went with it. I'm like, well, now I know what to do if the kids bust through the door, just roll with it. But he also was commenting on the fact that, we were talking about if you're wanting a certain sound, you can go to these certain groups or builders and get a custom sound that you want. And he liked the commentary, I guess we were talking about, which was it's always nice to get positive feedback from the listeners. So it was a very good episode. I'm very proud of it, and and also the comments of you have more of the technical side of like understanding drums and how they're made, so it's like a good contrast. So everyone's super excited about that. Like, yes, Adam, he knows a lot about drums. I'm like, yes, he does.
Cool.
So.
Yeah, I saw some of that feedback. I didn't get to see too much, but I did get quite a bit. So It was great.
So this week's topic is drum solos. So are you when it comes to your playing, do you like to do drum solos, or is that I know some people are like very like they love it or they hate it. There's not like really a middle ground, I've noticed.
I don't think I like to do them. I mean, in my head, like it's kind of funny because growing up and playing, I never played with a band too much when I was younger. I'd always just like play the drums in my room, and I'd go through rudiments and I'd go through different exercises and activities and play along with the radio or whatever. But my practices kind of turned into drum solos for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't mind doing a little something at the end of a song, or like if somebody that I know is there and they yell drum solo, I'll just like do some triplets on the toms for like 30 seconds and call it done. But yeah, I don't know what it is. It's not that I don't know. I don't know if it's being, I don't know. It could be being put on the spot or whatever, but I tend to shy away from them.
Mm-hmm.
But just for whatever reason, I don't know.
Well, I've noticed there's some drummers who like to, they, like you said, that if it's either the spotlight on them or they'd rather solo within the song with their band. Like Carter Beauford, I noticed, is one of those. He actually would prefer, I think I read an interview one time in like Modern Drummer, that he likes to solo with the band and create his solo within like the composition of the jam and make it spontaneous, but kind of planned out. And
right.
I find that pretty cool. Me personally, I've always liked to do them. I don't know if it's just I have that hey, look at me disease kind of thing that some people have. I'm guilty of that, and so I like doing them. But I was just curious to see if you were the kind of drum solo type. And I guess to each his own when it comes to that kind of stuff. I've noticed.
Well, I guess when I like to do them is sort of like, I don't know what it is. Like if I'm there up on a stage and I'm expected to be the drummer to do a drum solo, it's I don't have anything against it, but it's not really appealing.
Yeah.
But where I like to do drum solos is when people don't know that you're a drummer, and you can being a middle school teacher, I go in the band room every now and then, and there's a bunch of kids there in the morning. And if you could bust out a solo there, like,
I got you.
Wow. Like I was not expecting my math teacher to come in here and do a drum solo. But so it's kind of neat to do that. I think that sort of
that is pretty rad. Yeah.
Yeah. Not to like show off and like try to show kids up, but like just because people aren't expecting it, and it's kind of neat to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool. Well, and when it comes to like, if I go in Guitar Center, like, I don't really like to go around and like play drums. Like, how like you always go in there and there's some like, dude that's just like thinks he's the best guy ever and just like goes in their little, like here in Asheville, the Guitar Center has like the full kit inside the cymbal room where it's like all enclosed, and the guy's just like going off, and like I'll be there with like a friend or like my wife or something, and she'd be like, do you want to go play? I'm like, not really,
right.
So I guess I'm modest when it comes to that, but this is more like college and high school when I'd want to do a drum solo, but not so much now. It's I don't have a lot of opportunities to go play like I used to, so it's it's not a big priority. Now it's like, oh, I got to play. I don't care if I get a solo this time. So
it's fun to do at Guitar Center sometimes, and it's the reason I do it is because I was impressed by it when I was younger. A guy I used to take drum lessons off of would do this like double stroke roll between his right hand and his right foot. And he got to the point where he was playing Wipeout with his right hand and his right foot, just going between the two, basically doing doubles and a lot of accents and stuff. And he did that once because he was packing up his drum kit, and somebody goes, "Hey, you never played Wipeout," and all he had left was the floor tom and the bass drum. And he just like stood there. He didn't even sit down or anything. He just like played it like very fast, like right out of the gate.
Nice.
And I was like, wow, that's a really impressive little thing to pull out of your sleeve every now and then. So I took drum lessons out of this guy. So I'm like, you got to get me closer to what you just did. So we worked on the right hand and right foot doubles. And that's something to pull out. Sometimes you can almost put somebody in their place, like at a Guitar Center. If not that that's what you'd go there for, but some people do. But like I was in there not too long ago, and there was this kid trying to teach this other kid how to play the drums, and he thought he was just like the cat's pajamas, and he's oh, you got to play like this, you're holding the sticks wrong, and all this other stuff, and kind of bossing the other kid around. And I don't really play the acoustic kits there, but I kind of like to tinker around the electric kits.
Yeah.
And I just sat down on this electric kit, and I wasn't playing very loud, but I just started doing the right hand, right foot doubles, and they both kind of like looked at me like, who is this guy? And it's kind of one of the only tricks I have, so I like to bring it out whenever possible, but not really a drum solo, but
it's just just having fun. Yeah. And it's funny, Guitar Center is like the only place, like only where you can go in and start playing the drums. Like there's like 3 or 4 other music shops in my city, and like if you like you even look at the kit wrong, they're like screaming at you like, don't touch it, and you're like, dude, chill. It's just I wanted to hear what the cymbal sounds like. I'm not like beating it to death, but and they freak out. But the Guitar Center, they're like, have at it, go ahead.
Yeah.
Which is cool. I mean, that's inviting to drummers to be free. But I asked the guy one time, I was checking out, and I was like, "How do you do this all day?" He's like, "You just tune it out after a while." I'm like, "I couldn't. There's no way. I would lose my mind after like 10 minutes." But but it is Guitar Center, so it's necessary and evil at the same time. So you just have to go with it. But back to drum solos, I was thinking, okay, so what's the first like drum solo that you remember, like growing up as a kid?
Well, that would more than likely be Moby Dick. I mean, my dad was a Led Zeppelin fan, and it kind of it's one of the only not one of the only, but one of the more famous like recorded drum solos that being a kid in the 80s you would have heard. So that one, I guess, would be the first one that I really heard and paid attention to. And I remember that was sort of like the drum solo that everyone was trying to obtain when I was in like middle school. We had a kid that was good at guitar, so everyone's like, "Hey, do you know how to play Freebird yet?" And then you tell them you're a drummer, and they say, "Well, do you know how to play Moby Dick?" So it was always that sort of like the song that everyone was reaching for. But that would totally be, I'd say, the first drum solo that I ever really listened to and wanted to emulate.
Yeah. I've been racking my brains for the past, ever since we started talking about it, and I can't remember like the first drum solo that really like popped out at me, which is really weird. And so like when people ask me that, I'm like, I just don't know. Like I'm like, I guess maybe something from Dave Matthews Band maybe, but even then I'm like scratching my brain. And so the drum solo that kind of like stood out to me like the first time was getting on Drummer's World in high school, and I was watching a solo of Eli Rubin. Do you know who he is?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is when he was really young, and he played at one of the Modern Drummer like undiscovered drum contests, whatever they used to have back in the day, and I think he was like 9, 10 years old and just like tearing it up. And I'm thinking that's like the first solo I remember. I don't know if it's just I'm getting older or, what it is, but that's the one that just really clicked with me. And I was just watching it like over and over again. Like, this guy is 10. This kid is 10 years old. He's like 50 times better than me. How is this possible? And, and then that led me, with Modern Drummer growing bigger and bigger, and then not Modern Drummer, Drummer World. It was you get on there and you get on one of those tangents, and you're like, oh my god, I've been in here for 3 hours just watching videos. So, and I still when we started talking about this podcast, I went there and like revisited all these drum solos that's on that website, and it's such a fantastic website. I'm so jealous of the guy that thought of it, because been going to it for 15 years almost.
Right.
But so I know both of us picked out about 4 of our favorite drum solos. So I'm going to bring it up on my list. I was trying to find a program where you could play like music and they could hear it over the when we're talking, but I did not succeed at that. So what's your first solo on there you had, and why you liked it?
Well, I think all the solos that I sort of picked have a similar sort of theme to them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all sort of standalone solos. They're not really in the middle of a song, right? It's just kind of like almost like you'd see it like a drum clinic where
Mm-hmm.
a drummer kind of sits down. And I guess the first one I want to talk about would be Jojo Mayer from the '98 Modern Drummer Festival,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that took place in New Jersey. And at the time, my dad said, "Hey, I just bought us tickets to go to this Modern Drummer Festival in New Jersey." So me, my brother, and my dad made a weekend out of it, and we like got my dad's truck and we drove to New Jersey and stayed at a hotel.
Nice.
And we, within walking distance, and we like 2 days in a row go to these like just endless drum clinics.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I don't know if anyone had ever heard of Jojo Mayer.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Obviously, some people had, but I mean, we're talking 1998. And the way he was introduced, I think they said, you probably haven't talked much about this guy. It's like, but tomorrow he's probably the only person you will be talking about. They said something like that. And then they introduced him. And so that drum solo there, just like being in the presence of it while it was happening and just like watching him and the way he sort of builds. He starts really kind of slow and he's doing a lot of like brush work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's reminiscent of some of the other solos that I included in my list. But so I don't think it's completely sort of original design of the solo, but that one there. And he just does some really crazy stuff. He's doing some great intricate stick work. He's doing some really awesome, like, single stroke roll type stuff, really fast, single hand work. And his bass drum foot's out of control. And
I know he does the double bass without having double bass.
Right. And then it just like it like builds every like 30 seconds. He just adds like another layer and it becomes more complicated. And then he starts doing all these like stick tricks where he's like holding the stick under his chin and like between his ear and his shoulder. And he's just, I mean, I think at some point at that show, he did mention that prior to being a drummer, he was actually a juggler. And
well, that makes sense.
Yeah, so I was like, well, that obviously, yeah, we're watching this guy juggling sticks while he's doing a drum solo. But that would probably be the first one on my list. And it was awesome. I remember coming back to school and telling all my like music friends, like, you gotta check out this guy, Jojo Mayer. He's just ridiculous. And they're like, no, you can't be as good as Neil Peart. And I'm like, just close your mouth and try to find this guy. And I mean, 1998 was pre-YouTube and all that. So we ended up buying the video, the 2-day 2-package. It was like VHS cassettes, I think.
I'm about to say VHS, yes.
Yeah. So and we bought it basically just so we could watch his solo again. And we used to watch it all the time. Me, my dad, and my brother were all into drumming and played. So we were super into it, and we just thought the guy was unbelievable.
Yeah, I think '98 was like that particular Modern Drummer Festival was like almost like infamous in like how great it was, because there was like multiple drummers that like really like changed things up on that festival. I'm trying to think, like they had a couple of metal. Wasn't like Mike Tempest, Rob Zombie's drummer? Wasn't he there? And maybe. I want to say David Liberato from Slayer.
I'm not really sure on those two. I know that Danny Carey from Tool was there.
Yeah.
And Terry Bozzio. And I want to say Tony Royster Jr. Just like a lot of these like heavy hitters. And those are the names that are sticking out to me right now. I forget some of the other ones in the middle, but
there was a female drummer, Hillary something, I think played there as well.
Right.
If I'm not mistaken, but yeah, do they even still do the Modern Drummer festivals?
I don't know. I used to be big into getting Modern Drummer, like when I was in high school, and I used to. It was like my Bible. But then I when I went to college, I stopped getting it and never got it since then. But
Yeah, I'll walk through like a Barnes and Noble and like pick one up and peruse through it, but
right.
like I don't think they are doing the drum festivals anymore. I think the last one might have been like 2006
Okay.
that I recall. Like I think Guitar Center kind of like overshadowed it, or like kind of took some of the drummers away, and they're like, all right, you guys run with it. So, um,
Yeah.
but yeah, but let's see. It's funny because a lot of people like they when they hear the drummers I like, and and they're like, oh well, you must love Carter Beauford or Chad Sexton's drum solo, but that's not the case. My absolute favorite all time solo is Charlie Antolini, and it's Caravan, which is it's a pretty well known jazz
Hmm.
big band kind of song, and I believe it was '98 as well. I think maybe a little bit earlier. I'm trying to look at the exact date.
I think it's 93. Is that?
Okay, yeah, I was way off. Yeah, I'm trying to. I have yours pulled up, but I didn't have mine pulled up because I'm a slacker. Yeah, '93. So yeah, it was the jazz festival in Switzerland. But yeah, it kind of starts off like the Joe Mayer one, very slow, and then it keeps building, and he incorporates double bass, which is other than like Louis Belson, that was like the only other guy that used double bass that was from that same kind of genre drummer.
Right. Yeah.
But the my favorite part was his like standalone snare drum, bass drum. Like he really got some complex sticking and patterns, I guess you could say. I don't know how you describe it, but it's just like I remember like trying to copy it over and over again because he gets so fast at the end with the snare work, and then he solos for a good at least 8 minutes, which is that's a long time, and the dude is not young by any means. He's probably in his 50s there and just tearing it up,
Hmm.
and it's just such a great solo that just inspired me. I'm like that if I'm gonna do a solo, that's kind of how I would approach it and was inspired by. So uh,
Yeah.
everyone's like, really? I've never heard that guy. I've never heard that song. It's like, dude, check it out. You'll love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's second on your list?
Well, I would probably say, I don't know, because it's probably my favorite, but it's so much closer to, I think, the Jojo Mayer,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that's the Dylan Elise.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know the exact title of it. It's the his most popular one. I'm going to click on it right now on YouTube. It just says "Amazing Drum Solo" is the name of the video,
Amazing.
and it's Dylan Elise when he was 16 at the Tauranga National Jazz Festival in New Zealand, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But the dude just absolutely kills it, and it's a very similar sort of structure to the JoJo one. It starts kind of slow and some piddly little snare stuff, and then he just like builds and builds and builds, and he gets to the point where he's basically throwing sticks in the air and catching them and hitting stuff with them. And I guess similar to the JoJo thing, what I like is there's this like almost like a melody line somewhere in there. There's like it's a little more than just rhythm. He's got this like the beat going, but he's kind of like playing a little ditty between, and on Dylan, it's a series of like cowbells or like jam blocks or something that he's really playing that. So it's kind of carrying this like little interesting, intricate thing while the drum solo is going on. So it almost feels like there's two parts to it. And so, I mean, that one, when I first saw that a couple of years ago, and I was just like, you got to be kidding me. It kind of like blew me out of the water.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started trying to find as many Dylan Elise videos as I could. And there's a whole bunch that are really awesome from, it looks like some sort of like carnival in the streets or whatever. And he's kind of like sitting outside on this like, almost like a little small bop kit.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just tooling away and he's just playing these drum solos like for people walking by. And at one point during that video, he does this one-handed, like a left hand drum roll, just and it's blazing fast, and you're like, wow, this guy's doing a left-handed one hand drum roll.
Yeah.
And then he starts playing a beat on top of it or something. He's doing this like juxtaposed sort of almost polyrhythmic thing on top of this one-handed roll, and you're just like, are you freaking kidding me? This guy's out of control. And I remember watching the video and trying to get as many, because you can see people in the audience like with their phones out taking video, and I'm like, there's got to be other angles of this. I want to see exactly what he's doing with his hand. And I remember finding this one video that kind of showed me what I was looking for. And I went to work the next day, and I'm trying to like mathematically figure it out. Like, how is he getting his stick to move that way? Mm-hmm. And I'm like using pencils and like fulcrums and all sorts of weird stuff. And I've started to dissect it and almost incorporate it into my own play a little bit. The problem with it is that you can't really do it at a low volume. It's this method of you almost pushing using the rim as like a pivot point. So you hit when your hand goes down with the tip of your stick, and then as you push your hand past the rim on the outside of the rim, the stick tip goes up, and then when you pull the stick back up, you can, with enough force in your fingers, hit it back against the head. So every time you move your hand down, it hits twice. Using that sort of like the fulcrum of the rim. And watching him do that and trying to get a little better at it myself, I've been able to do it a little bit. But like, this kid's like 17 years old, and he's like playing on the street with no shirt on, doing this thing at like 100 miles an hour, like he's been doing it every day since he was born. But so he's just always impressed the snots out of me, I guess.
And speaking of interruptions,
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Well, but yeah, I was looking at his video, and he plays traditional grip, which is I think every drummer we've talked about thus far has played traditional grip when it comes to their solos, which I can't play traditional grip at all. It's never been something I could really get a handle on. And after I talked to Freddie Charles, he's about, you can get actually a lot more power playing traditional grip versus match grip. So it's something I might try to see if I can start learning, but it just Daddy. Hello. But he's got a very interesting set as well. I'm looking at it. Hello, Kason. You do? Okay. He's got these cool cymbals, like his cymbals are double stacked with the splashes on top, which is very, very cool as well. So let's see.
Yeah. I think he's a big guy.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I think he's like I think he's tall. He's like 6 foot something. I think
he looks,
because it looks like the drum kit's really small, especially like the distance between the mounted toms and the bass drum. It looks like he's playing like an 18-inch bass drum or something. But I don't know if it's just because he's kind of a big guy. But
kind of like a Danny Carey kind of guy, because I think Danny Carey's like 6'3" and very athletic looking as well, which is not your typical drum, physique, I guess you could say.
Right. But
my son is informing me that the Legos that he's want are too expensive.
Oh, that usually happens. I think that's the story with all Lego.
Legos are ridiculously expensive.
One day he'll be saying that about cymbals. So.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, like, can you believe it's $400 for cymbals? Like, yes, I can. But the thing is, he wants the figurines. He could care less about the Legos themselves.
Right.
And Lego forces you to buy the figurines and not the that's their market. They know what they're doing. So
yeah.
Oh no, give that. It's a thing I need to give to mommy. Can you go play? Shh, I'm talking, okay? Can you go play? Of course, I get always just a minute. That's our answer for everything. Just a minute.
Right.
So, but we'll continue. Hold on to it. They're fighting over food right now. So, the second solo on the list was for me was Jose Patias from Incubus.
Right.
Live at Red Rocks. is such a cool solo because it's not just him. He incorporates the lead singer playing, djembe and doumbeks. Then you got his bass player Ben Kenny, who is also an incredible drummer. I don't know if you've ever checked out any of his solo work, but he is. I understand why they brought him in when their original bass player left. They're like, this guy can do everything. Let's utilize him. And so it was cool to see that three-way drum solo and them, it was almost had like a marching band vibe to it, which was pretty rad. And then of course it ends with them soloing, just him soloing, and he's one of those doesn't use double bass. He has the very shallow toms, but a ton of cymbals, and he just kills it. And I love his snare drum sound. He uses a marching snare drum head on his snare drum too, which is to give that nice crack to it.
Yeah.
And then and of course it melts into a very cool ending to a song, almost very Neil Peart Rushish at the end. It's very complicated, and it has different rhythmic sections and stuff like that. I remember showing it to one of my friends who's a big Rush fan, and that was the first thing he said, like, gosh, this sounds like old school Rush. I'm like, yeah, it kind of does, which is, you don't think of Rush and Incubus in the same sentence. So
yeah,
but it's one of those I've tried to copy several times over, and I fail miserably each time.
Yeah. And I mean, when you're talking about, Incubus, you're talking about people that were probably listening to Rush as they were growing up and like idolizing Rush and Neil Peart so like you can find traces of all that. And it's something I do when I listen to John Bonham. I listen to some of the things and I'm like, that's totally a Buddy Rich thing right there. And it's like, well, that's who he was listening to, when he was a kid. I'm sure that's the music he was hearing when he wanted to be a drummer.
Yeah.
So you can kind of trace it a little bit.
And it's funny that you just mentioned Buddy Rich, because we both put down Buddy Rich drum solos as like our third pick. And yours is the Animal one where he's on the Muppet Show back in the 70s. And like you said in your email, it's not the best solo, but it's such just a cool back and forth. And I remember watching the Muppet Show as a kid, and it was such a highbrow comedy, but it's targeted toward kids, and it was still funny. But and I like, because it starts out with Buddy coming on the stage, and he's drumming on the Muppets' heads and the sides of the walls, and it just shows you he had a good attitude toward the whole thing, which is always fun to see a drummer not taking it too serious.
Yeah. And that one made my list. One of the things I did during my sort of research phase is I walked around, and mostly people that I know that were musical, and that solo came up a lot. I said, hey, do you have any favorite drum solos? And when I asked my band, 2 out of the 6 people in my band were like, oh, you got to do Buddy Rich versus Animal. I was like, yeah, that's pretty good. So just the concept, I think, is pretty funny. And if you haven't seen it, if anyone listening hasn't seen it, it's a great one to just kind of put on and listen to it. It's
Well, and it's funny because they did the a couple months ago they did the great Dave Grohl from Foo Fighters drumming against Animal, and it transcends generations now.
Right.
That Animal is almost more popular now with drummers than almost back then. He's like almost like the unofficial mascot of drumming, like.
Right. There's that. And I think people that knew him kind of similarly, like, when we were kids, Animal was, a character that you could see on TV, pretty regularly. And so he sort of was synonymous with like, drumming. So I think a lot of people see that.
Yeah, they identify with it. And
right.
Yeah. But the Buddy Rich one I had picked out is every solo he did was incredible, and it was actually my favorite part of that solo. It was in 1970 was where he got really super quiet, and he was just on the snare drum, and he angles his snare drum forward, so because he plays traditional grip, so you can get that good rim shot. But he was just doing these light,
Yeah.
this very light rolls on the edge of like almost where the rim of the or the hoop of the drum and the very edge of the drum head. You could see, like in the video, there's like a worn out spot where he hits so precisely, and he's just doing that really soft roll, and then all of a sudden he like does this warp where he like warps his sticks into the shell. That's like, I don't know how you describe it, but it's just like makes this weird low like swell, and then comes back out and just goes into like this fiery snare drum solo, and just the ending, he's just just going absolutely insane. And Buddy Rich is one of those drummers everybody, even drummers know who Buddy, or non-drummers know who Buddy Rich is.
Oh yeah.
And which is so cool because he's from that era of the 1950s 40s. I think he started out as at 3 in the 1930s, and he played all the way up till his death, so he had a good career of drumming, and there's quite a body of work to watch as well, which is great.
And kind of to tie a couple pieces together, I don't know if it's on the solo from the YouTube channel, but if you look at that Jojo Mayer solo, when people in the audience start saying like, how the hell do you move your left hand that fast? Like, he's like, oh, it's one of Buddy Rich's secret weapons. He tells you this is a Buddy Rich technique.
Yeah.
And like, well, how about your right foot? How are you getting your right foot to move that fast? He goes, oh, it's a Buddy Rich technique.
Yeah.
Like, oh, all right. So you're just reinventing Buddy Rich a little bit, or trying to. And yes, I mean, he's sort of like the grandfather of a lot of that sort of like modernized public displays of drumming.
Yeah, because you go back and you watch those old like TV shows, variety shows from the 60s and 50s. They'd have the drum offs between Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich. Buddy Rich versus I'm blanking on that Ed. I cannot pronounce his last name. It starts with an S, and it's like Senkia or something like that. And he just, those drum battles are just so classic, and I love to see them kind of come back in a way, and
right.
See them on TV or in some type of form, maybe on an internet show or something like that. But it is what it is. And then let's see, you had one more, right?
Yeah, I did. I put one more on that list, and it's kind of a combination of a bunch of things, but it's a Dave Weckl solo, just because that guy's phenomenal as well. And I just figure out exactly where it's from. It says from the appearance at the Australian Drumming Festival. So it's billed as the big drum solo, and it's
yeah, there's a murder going on in my house.
I was going to say, you might want to check in on that. It's very similar to the Jojo Mayer solo in the sense that it starts with the brushes on the snare and kind of does this light pitter-pattery stuff, and then kind of erupts into something more with all sorts of really crazy rhythms going on, and some of that like rhythmic patterns going on as well. So I mean, all three of those that I put forward so far are very, very similar in that structure. Starting out kind of light, getting more intense, having that sort of melodic kind of thing. You're like, oh, there's a neat little groove right there, and then kind of pulling out of it. And but Dave Weckl is just kind of one of those guys that has way too much damn time on his hands to play the drums. I don't know how you can get that good. Not that, like, the other part with Dave Weckl is there's some people that are like super diehard Dave Weckl fans, and I'm really not. I took lessons from a guy who was, but I'm not, because I can't really listen to music that he plays. Like, like Led Zeppelin. I like listening to Led Zeppelin and John Bonham because I think the music sounds awesome, right? Dave Weckl kind of sounds like the Weather Channel background music on steroids. It's just like crazy stuff that like like, well, I can't really like tap my foot to like 11/16 time or some crazy whatever's going on. I mean, the guy's ridiculously talented,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I'm not going to like buy a CD and like listen to it on my drive to work.
Yeah.
So it's
I'm totally with you. It's like you said, it's like a glorified Weather Channel music, or elevator
right.
music. It's
Yeah.
like I can listen to maybe 30 seconds. I'm like, yeah, it's a cool groove. Okay, I'm done with that. Let's move on. And
Yeah.
but yeah, he gets mad. I guess he does some studio work, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm trying to like look through his dossier, and it's mainly just him with random fusion bands or jazz fusion bands. So there must be somebody that likes it. I don't know many people who do, but they got to be somewhere.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like drummers that are super impressed by like just like technical like chops, or will just like kind of watch it and scrutinize it, and it gives them something to strive for, but at the same time it lacks some of that, like, the pleasantry of being music, like there's I think there's not enough like emotion in it. It's just technical stuff. It's like a math equation performed instead of like, poetry. It's got more of that just like rigid sort of, I don't know.
Yeah, it's very, it's not very soulful.
Right.
Yeah. But, and speaking of Dave Weckl, then there's also that great, three-way drum solo between him, Vinny Colaiuta, and Steve Gadd.
Yeah.
I think was that a Buddy Rich tribute or memorial service?
I forget. I've never seen that like in its context. I've kind of just like,
yeah, I've caught like bits and pieces of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a great solo. Like after a while, I get kind of bored with it because you can only do so many cool drum solo stuff. This might be heresy, and I'll probably get flack for it, but like Neil Peart's drum solos, I respect Neil Peart. I appreciate Neil Peart. I'm not a Rush fan by any stretch of the imagination. Like I like maybe 2 of their songs, and the rest of them like,
Right.
And even his solos, like they're so great, they're very technical. It's just after a while I get kind of bored. It's just way too drawn out. It's way too overhyped in my opinion. But I will probably be getting hate mail from listeners saying, "How dare you say anything about Neil Peart? He's the best." I'm like, I know he's the best. It's just not my thing. So
right.
we have to mention him as being a great drummer, but I can have the opinion of he's a little overrated. So
yeah, and again, that's a lot of the Rush music is music that like I'm not going to drive around town listening to it.
Yeah,
if I'm looking for like a homework assignment and like I want to sit there and focus on something and not like zone out and relax, like music is kind of supposed to be a little bit like Rush to me is kind of like I need to listen really hard at this part so I can figure out what he's doing. It's not, and just like, I don't know, the vocals there, it's almost more like a dentist drill a little bit than it is. Like it's not a relaxing tone. It's just this kind of like, wow, you guys are impressive and you can play music very well. Good. But like, I can't listen to you for like 2.5 hours.
Yeah. I had my best friend in high school. He's like, Rush would be the best band in the world if they had a new lead singer. I'm like, valid point, and you're probably right. If they had someone else singing, they could have really been whoosh. But Geddy Lee's voice is a little piercing sometimes.
Right. And it's I had the same problem with Dream Theater when they were sort of bigger. I was like, you know what? This is very much like Rush. It's great music. Everyone's really talented. You're doing great stuff. Congratulations. But I'm not going to like buy the CD and just like turn it on in my room and just like hang out and relax and like it. I don't know. I mean, music's for more than relaxing too, but at the same time, it just doesn't, I don't know, get my brain waves going up and down in the right pattern to listen to for any sustainable amount of time.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like, I get it. Okay, I'm moving on. Sorry.
Yeah.
But oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say a couple of things kind of recapping on what we said so far. One of the things that I really like about Buddy Rich is when you look at what he's playing on, and in particular, look at his hardware.
Mm-hmm.
He's got these like the stands that would come with, like, if you bought like the lowest quality, like $200 beginner drum kit that you can get, to have like single braced, like straight vertical stands
Mm-hmm.
that are less than a half an inch thick in diameter. Like, that's what his cymbal stands are. And like,
Mm-hmm.
I one of the kits I'm playing on at my my guitar player's house right now has it's very basic beginner's kit. I bought it for $50 and it came with all the hardware. And I'm looking at the hardware the other day and I'm like, this stuff's puny. I'm like, it's kind of like that stuff Buddy Rich has and all his like fantastic drum solo videos. So people are like, are you nervous that you got this cheap, nasty hardware? And I'm like, well, no, if like Buddy Rich can play on stuff that's of, you know, this thickness and being single braced, I don't know why I need a $700 like Drum Workshop 9000 boom stand with a counterweight.
Oh yeah.
But
yeah, that is funny. You know, seeing some of the stuff that, you know, you look at it, you're like, how did they do these complicated, you know, things on their kits? You know, they look like, you know, and by today's standards, garbage. But I guess back then, you know, I guess the perspective of, well, this is what we have, and you know, this is the best as we can get right now. So you just make do. But it still just blows your mind that they can accomplish.
Like everyone's trying to like emulate John Bonham's right foot. You know, you listen to Good Times, Bad Times or something, like, man, I wish I could play that song. And then you like really focus on it. He's playing this like Ludwig Speed King that, I mean, by today's standards is not like one of the, you know, there's no like, you know, $400 bearings in there. You know, if I remember the story correctly, when he bought that pedal, it had a leather strap and he replaced that with like a chain from a bicycle he pulled out of his shed. Like it's not like, you know, they're not playing on like a $400 single pedal, you know? And it's one of those things that when I was a kid trying to play, my dad always reminded me of that because I'm like, I need this pedal. He's like, well, John Bonham was playing on this like Speed King that he modified in his basement. So like all those kind of things showing up, I think are kind of neat.
Like, thanks, Dad, for reminding me. You know,
yeah,
I really wanted the Iron Cobra, but my dad was the same way. You know, he looked at, like, he didn't play drums, but he'd look at stuff. He's like, well, this is better. You've got better than, you know, what Don Henley has. I'm like, I know, but I need this, you know, and it's just, it's the constant battle of being a drummer. But
well, when I bought my pedal for my kit that I play now, it's the Drum Workshop 3000 series pedal. So it's not even like, I think it's like $100 pedal, brand new. And I'm perfectly happy with it. I can go as fast as I used to have a 5000 series Drum Workshop when I was in high school. And I can go just as fast on this one as I could on that. So it's not a huge difference.
Well, and you know, the pedal I have now is just it's the Iron Cobra Junior. You know, it's just a single chain, nothing fancy. And, you know, I had an Iron Cobra double bass pedal at one point, and I don't have it anymore, you know, and I always think, would I be developing my foot technique better if I had it, you know, and sometimes I think, well, maybe if I would, maybe I wouldn't. Having the more primitive, I guess you could say, pedal maybe makes me practice harder, you know, and work at it. So,
yeah.
So, and the last one for me was Darren King from Mute Math. Now, are you? Have you ever seen Mute Math live or anything?
I've not seen them live. No.
Oh, they're the best. I've seen them twice. And talk about a drummer who like doesn't care about like the fads. You know, when you see drummers nowadays, it's all about how big of a kit you got. You know, it's this custom. You know, it's all. You know, I've got the DW, you know, exotic series, you know, made out of whatever kind of wood, you know, and then, you know, when I've seen his kit, you know, and look, you know, actually talked to him and after a show and like saw his kit, and you're like, this dude just like bought this at a garage sale like yesterday, threw some heads on it, and you know, it sounds amazing. And he's just a hi-hat and a ride, and doubles it as a crash, and does some really complicated drumming, with it. But his solos, he always like disassembles part of his kit, puts it on the like the piano player's like piano, and starts like beating on it and on the floor tom. And the show I saw here in Asheville, like he took his they have a bass drum they put like on a piano stand, and hit it with the mallet. Well, they take it off. He takes it and carries it in the crowd. Then he holds it up, and then like he gets on top of the bass drum while like the rest of the band's like doing some other drum solo stuff, and jumps off of it into the crowd, which is such a such a rad thing to do. And luckily, I was not one of those trying to like catch him, because I'm like, I actually was, I was on the side at that point, because I'm like, I want to get a cool picture of it. But it's just involving the crowd, I think, is always fun when you're doing a drum solo, because it just makes it more personal. And in the experience, everyone's it's a communal thing when you can, hold him up on his bass drum and let him jump off into the crowd. So it's just such a rad thing. And he's
right.
I met him a long time ago. It's a funny story, because I, being the cocky drummer that I thought I was, like I'm like, I'm pretty good. And he was at this point touring for some band called Ursuit, and these girls that I went to the same church I did, like knew him, and they brought him and said, "Hey, this is Darren King. He's the new drummer for blah blah blah." I'm thinking, yeah, he's he's probably not that good, and like he gets on my kit and just wails away, and I'm like, jaw on the floor, like just could not believe how great this guy was. And then of course I'm like, "You're all right, just don't worry, you're not going to get anywhere, son." Kind of attitude. And then when Mute Math came out, and that was back in 2007. I'm like, oh gosh, that's that guy. I'm like, yeah, you kind of made a fool of yourself. But I've met him again in the past, and after that, and he's like, I don't even remember it. So I'm like, oh, good. Let's not pretend. Oh, what conversation? We didn't talk, and I didn't trash you. Yeah. So, but it's just, he's a cool guy. So, any other drum solos that you can think of that
Well, the weird part for me is that all like the people that I really like am impressed by nowadays as drummers, they're not really like solo people. They're like one of the guys that I just can't get enough of is Homer Steinweiss. He's drumming for Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings, but he used to be in the group the Mighty Imperials, and they made one album, and he's just such like a funky like pocket drummer, just like snare and bass and hi-hats, and the guy's just like in the right spot at the exact right time, and it's just like this tight, like clean, just like funky sound, and like that kind of stuff. And I mean, he's great for Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings too, and just I don't know, it's not really he's not a drum solo guy. I couldn't find any drum solos from him, and it's just one of those guys that I'm just like, you know what, this guy is all over it, and like I'm sure he could do something awesome. And then the other one that's kind of similar, I mentioned before in one of our podcasts, is I always blank on his name though. The drummer for G Love.
That guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same story. He's just like this really like tight like pocket drummer. He's got like really like well placed little squelches here and there, and it just has tons of groove. And but you hardly ever see him like really just ripping like a crazy solo. So it was kind of a more difficult assignment than I thought, because I like wanted to like bring some of like my idols up a little more, but I guess I'm kind of that way too. As I said at the beginning, I'm not a guy who's going to like jump out there and like just bust out a solo. But I like to think of myself as being a little more sort of like that, in the pocket kind of thing, and just throwing down a whole bunch of groove.
Yeah.
And so I think that's maybe why I idolize them a little bit, is that I feel that similarity that I see there. It's just like groove and um, just like tiny little pockets of flash and not like a big puddle of it.
Yeah.
But,
Well, and it's funny, you've got these, drummers who almost strive for just the shred session kind of guys who just, they're incredible drummers. They can go around the kit so incredibly fast and do all these stick flips and cymbal tricks and all that stuff. But it worries me at the same time. There's a lot of drummers who strive for just that. They just strive for I want to get to the Guitar Center drum off, show off all these cool tricks, and not really concentrate on drumming, because drumming and drum soloing are two different things,
Right.
and you can be the greatest soloist ever, but when it comes to actually working within a band and making a groove, and that's a different thing, and I think that takes more talent than just just going crazy. And
well, there's it's almost like two completely different approaches. So it's almost apples and oranges in a way.
Yeah, but I've just noticed with the younger generation, especially on like Instagram, it's all about speed and with like Buddy Rich, there's speed, but then you go and listen to like a Buddy Rich song where he's playing with his big band. He knows when to throw in those things and when to hold back, which is important. I think when you're a drummer to learn to decipher from those two things, when to let it just all out, and then this part just basic, just keep it basic. But I guess to each his own. But I've just noticed that over the recent, I guess with the prevalence of social media and people can post anything easily, you see more of that, and it's flashy. People love it, but to me, I guess you could say as a consumer, show me a cool groove. Almost like you said, in the pocket. It impresses me more these days than just flashiness.
Yeah, and kind of tying it back together too, like some of that kind of music is stuff that I listen to every single day. Like today on my ride to work, it was Mighty Imperials on my iPod the whole way in, and just like still, I'm like, you got to be kidding me! This stuff is so good. For saying these, like, it was like 4 like teenage kids. They like showed up in the studio, busted out this fantastic album. And that was like it. And they all went their separate ways. And like Homer's doing stuff with Sharon Jones, and some of the other guys are doing stuff with some big names too. But like man, what a fantastic like little group that was. And they're one of, if I could find a band right now that like said we're just going to be a Mighty Imperials cover band, I'd be like, let's do it. I'll quit my job. I'll do it all day long. It's so good.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. It's, I've been, checking them out, since you mentioned them, but yeah, it's, I'm like you, I'm kind of more into the grooves these days than the solos. It was fun, watching, I think every night, leading up to this, I've been on YouTube, watching various solos or something, especially with YouTube, they'll like, right, oh, if you like this, you'll like that. And, I think there was somebody that posted something. It might've been you, of the guy from, he played at a Modern Drummer Festival. I'm blanking on his name. He's playing, it was him and, a guy playing bass and a guy playing organ.
I think that was me on my my personal Facebook page.
What is that?
Yeah,
I'm blanking on the dude's name, but like he is such a that music is so. Even though it is a solo, he's jamming with inside the band, and it's such a incredible sound they're all doing together.
And that was somebody that I just happened upon through. Following all these like Facebook leads. It's not somebody that I had really heard of too much, I don't think, before posting that. But.
No, I'd seen it in the past, but when you posted, I'm like, oh, this guy's good. I like this. So
right,
yeah.
And even like I John Bonham just as much as the next guy,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the song that sticks with me for them is like my favorite song. I'd say has to be like the Lemon song, and it's just it's groovy. It's got all kinds of for a Zeppelin song. It's got all sorts of just like deep, like bass driven groove, and it changes tempo. It has quiet parts. It has loud parts. It's just dynamic in that way.
Yeah, it's definitely it definitely does not have like a trademark sound to it, but it is definitely unique. My daughter is giving me a kiss on my face. Thank you. Love you too. But yeah, drum solos. It's people are like, this is the strangest podcast. It's just let their kids just like start talking to them. Like, yeah, that's our thing. But
So it's happening now.
Okay, thank you. But drum solos. There's so many other drummers we could talk about, but I think we've shed some light on some of the other drummers that in my opinion, should get more respect and notoriety for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many people out there doing stuff, and I'm sure there's some kid right now in his basement playing something that 2 years from now we're going to be like, holy crap, where did this kid come from? So it's that's the nature of the beast. It's one-upmanship at its best, but at the same time, everybody's building off of the people before him, so you can see their influences and you can see like where they're taking it. And I've had to kind of change it to guitars for a little bit. We've had the debate before of, or not us, but I've been in it, where who's a better guitarist, Stevie Ray Vaughan or Jimi Hendrix? And then, well, the question comes up with like, would Stevie Ray Vaughan be playing the guitar if it wasn't for Jimi Hendrix? And you're like, great question. So it's like, that influence is there, and you can see it a lot of the times.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny because I think Stevie Ray Vaughan wanted to start off as a drummer too.
Possibly. I know his brother was playing guitar before him. So he very much might have, been that way, playing the guitar.
Yeah.
Playing the drums just to sort of be playing with his brother.
Yeah.
But,
and it's, and like my favorite drummer of all time, Stuart Copeland, he doesn't do drum solos. He's done like one, and it's on David Letterman, and I love Stuart Copeland, but he's not a great drum soloist. He's better playing with his band, if it's the Police or if it's his orchestra. He sounds better doing that stuff than actually soloing. When I watched it, it was very sluggish. You could tell he was like very uncomfortable about doing it, but it's just funny, how some drummers can turn that switch on in their head and do a solo incredible, and then some drummers are, they can play all the technical stuff, and you're like, do a solo, they're like, they just fumble through it. So
right,
yeah. So I think we've covered the drum solos good. Now I'm trying to think what be the next topic we should talk about, and I'm kind of stumped. Do you have any suggestions?
I'm not really sure.
Or maybe think about it for a day or two, and because I'm like, what should we? There's so much to cover, but I'm thinking I hadn't found that right thing to cover yet. So
I mean, you could talk about anything. You could, but at the same time, like, what's going to be a good topic to talk about?
Maybe I can bug that guy from Predator Drums. But hey, just by the way, you're going to be on the podcast.
I think if you asked him, he'd be pretty willing to do it.
Yeah. So maybe that's a sign we should try to. I'm going to work on that one. I think that'll be try to be the next one. See if I can finagle that one. I think that would be fun to have a conversation with that guy since he seems so open about sharing his knowledge. Yeah. I think that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, that'll totally work.
Yeah.
It's kind of neat that people are sort of accessible like that, and that technology allows us to do that. See somebody doing something, be like, you know what? Let's talk to that guy.
Let's talk to that guy.
And he's like, sure.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So
yeah. So if he's not on, then we'll know he said no. Yeah, but I don't think he'd do that. But I just think I think it's funny. It's like we're just telling this guy he's pretty much going to be on the podcast and has no choice. But
we'll see
we'll
where it
see.
takes it.
Yeah,
But
but there's something you brought up when I was in DC, which I thought was a great idea. Was the doing like a how you would word it, like almost like an Instagram, like an awards, like
right, like a People's Choice almost.
yeah, like there you go, People's Choice, and I think that's a great idea. I was telling my wife about it. She's like, "That's really good." So I think we should call it like the Insta Drums, first annual Insta Drums, and you know you know, kind of want like some user input, but also yours as well. How do you think we should approach this?
Yeah. I'm not really sure. I've done similar stuff as a teacher for my students where I give them options, and I've used some technology like survey websites, like SurveyMonkey is one that I've used, where like you'd just pick a topic and say like, what's the the best whatever. I do it for data collection so I can give the kids some real life math problems, but kind of like everyone can click on the link and just vote for what they're looking for. And it's kind of neat. And I think where it's kind of nice for social media is that you can have people sort of hype themselves up and sort of share with their friends that, they're looking for that kind of stuff. But.
Yeah. Cause I wrote some things down like, favorite drummer with less than 50,000 followers. Cause, it'd be easy to pick, somebody who has a ton of followers, but I think it's important to reach out to those. There's a lot of great drummers who have 10,000, 9,000, fans, but maybe do something like that with favorite or drummer with 50,000 fans, drummer with less than 50,000, favorite female drummer, both ways. Maybe YouTube drummer, favorite drum cover drummer. Favorite drumming website, kind of make it very, all encompassing, kind of very inclusive, kind of thing. I think would be a very cool way to do this. But
yeah,
I think you're onto something there with the.
What, we could even use a similar technique to figure out what our next topic is going to be. Like sort of a poll the audience, put it out there. Like, what do you want us to talk about? Give people some input on that end.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I think that's a good idea, and I think we'll roll with that here soon. Kind of make it a new part of the ever-growing Drumheads podcast empire. Get some more people involved for sure. So we'll do that, and I'll try to wrangle in the guy Mike from Predator to be on and talk about his stuff. So I think that'll be fun.
Yeah, that'll be super cool.
Yeah. All right, man. We'll figure this all out in the next couple of days, and we'll include the audience as well and get their input as well. But I think people are liking the 2-person discussions, and especially having you on. People are like, I'm so glad you got the second person to co-host with you. I'm like, me too. So,
well, I'm just happy to be here. It's good to talk about drums anyway, because I live in a house with three ladies. Well, my wife and 2 little girls. So they don't really want to talk about drums.
Yeah, like I just set up my kit in my kids' playroom, and surprisingly, it's not been touched much. Mainly because I've hid most of the drumsticks. They've managed to stow away a couple of them, but they hadn't really messed with it, which is surprising. I was hoping maybe one of them would kind of be like, just get over there and start doing some stuff, but not really. So but it's there. It's barking to be played for sure. I hadn't played it in a while.
I bought my daughter a drum kit for Christmas last year, and my drum kit's white, and it has a green sparkle stripe across it. And if you're familiar with crushed drums, it's one of their like more famous looks. So when I bought her a kit, I bought her a white kit, and I bought some glitter tape, and I made her kit look very similar to mine.
Oh, nice.
And I thought she'd like be all over it, because whenever I'm downstairs playing my drums, she always like tells my wife, like, I want to go down and play drums. I want to go down. So I have this drum kit, and she hasn't. I mean, she might have touched it once or twice since then. I was playing it today because it's a little tiny SPL, like little kids kit, and she's like, Dad, it's not time for music right now. And I'm like, oh, come on.
Yeah, I know. It's funny because when you think you're like, I'll get this for my kids, they'll love it, and then
right,
yeah. Kids are funny when it comes to that kind of stuff. I've noticed. But all right, well. I guess we'll leave it at that. So we'll reconvene in 2 weeks, and then we'll figure out in between how to do all this. But this is it. So everybody, we'll see you next week. Hey, Kason, tell everybody bye.
Bye.
Can you tell everybody bye, Kopi? Yeah, all the people who listen to Daddy's show. Say bye.
Bye.
Okay. All right. Well, Adam, you take it easy, and we'll talk in...
Anyway, it's on YouTube.
Yeah, I'll put it on YouTube. Okay, on your computer. Yes, 1 second. Yeah. So in 2 weeks we'll reconvene and get back together. So
sounds great.
All right. Well, you take it easy, man, and we'll figure this out in post.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Let me stop this real quick.